Now let's talk about a different area. How do you select the right market fit for your product? And in doing so, what factors did you consider selecting the right market or the right region? And then what did you take into consideration in terms of like partnerships, the geographical location or the positioning of the product to make that decision?
Yeah, and as I said earlier, that initial step that we took, it was a bit ad hoc, to be honest. And I think we matured and learned a lot and fast thereafter. Our first attempt at setting up our own operations was Singapore. And in many ways, it was kind of obvious choice because we worked with a lot of the global principals we worked with were their regional base was in Singapore, so there was a relationship that going on there. I mean, if you were to look at a regional headquarters, if you will, for the company, then Singapore was seemed like a good hub, right? I think the ease of doing business to the entry, all that I think was easy, and so on. So I think that for that reason we just narrowed in on Singapore. But to be honest, we didn't do extensive research as to that if that should be the first market for us, right? But then at the same time, I think we also wanted to have a regional base outside of Sri Lanka, right? Especially when we are looking at a more global market, right? Because
Mhm.
to be honest, the branding for Sri Lanka itself wasn't great at the time, right? And I think some of our initial dealings, especially in the US, right, with trying to get into partnerships and relationships with potential prospects and customers, we did encounter situations where people didn't know where Sri Lanka was to start with, right?
We can speak to that.
Yeah. So you talk about the tsunami, you need to talk about cricket and all these things, and then you get to that point, and then obviously there was adverse publicity about Sri Lanka, about a 30-year war, about the Easter
Mm.
bombings, about the tsunami, then economic crisis coming in, no power in the country, energy crisis, and so on, right? So all those things were not in the favor of a company who wants to make it happen while sitting in Sri Lanka, right? So, and we did think that it's best that we had a like a hub, or like a regional headquarters outside of Sri Lanka in a country or in a market which will be considered to be, strategic, right? So for that reason, I think Singapore was a good bet on that. But in terms of so while we set up Singapore as an entity, right? It was from a getting into principal partnerships, banking relationships, the transaction capability, operation capability, all being set up in Singapore. Getting down into business, I think we made a very good call at the time that we will start with partnerships, right? Our go-to-market strategy was going to be partnerships. So we created our own channel partner model, right? And this is about identifying the right partners, enabling them, incentivizing them, and getting them to do the selling for you because they know the market, right? And we,
Mm.
again, we are new, our brand is not known, so they know the market. They'll have the relationships, the Rolodex, etc., who can take you into new customers. And one part of the proposition also was, I mean, not going behind the large companies, right? We go with the smaller companies, and we created two partner models. One thing was what we called a referral partner model. You, as an individual or as a company, um, you refer some leads to us, and
Mm.
obviously there'll be a finder's fee or some commission model in it for you. Second model is, which actually really took off, was what we call the co-delivery partner model, right? And the co-delivery partner model is where we then worked with small to medium size similar companies that were based in those markets, in this case Singapore, right? And we told them, we opened up our portfolio to them, and we said, we have a significant portfolio, significant experience that we work with. Make it yours, white label us, right? You all
Mm.
front end it. We will be your technology delivery partner in the back end, right? But you go and sell it as yours, because for them, they can look much bigger and better with our
Mm.
portfolio when they hit the market, right? And
Mm.
that was really enticing to them, right? And then we were flexible on the business model. Can be a revenue share, we can go into some kind of joint venture model or so on, right? So I think there were some partners that really took on to that, right? And then they started approaching their market. Some big brands as well. Some of their customers were big brands, and they were able to do stuff that they were not able to do before, right?
Mm.
So I think that model really caught on for us, the channel partner model, and it was relatively cost effective as well, right? Without us having to make any significant investments.
Yeah, I think Shivan, you brought up some really good points. Sometimes we living here take it for granted, but if you are a company based out of Sri Lanka and trying to take it international, the kind of adversities that you have to face are much higher from the point like introducing where is Sri Lanka to then
Yeah.
some of the stigma associated with the unfortunate incidents that took place in the past. Definitely, kudos to you for being successful in spite of all these challenges. So I'm curious to ask when you build out those partnerships, there are, any like learnings, like especially like culturally, like, how did you work with so many different organization teams? How did you adapt? What learning can you share?
Yeah. So I think, to be honest, I think the we did have some learnings and maybe barriers as well internally to start with, right? Because I think there was excitement when we said we want to go global, go regional as a company, but a company that had been operating in Sri Lanka for more than 2 decades, 25 years plus. There was a lot of excitement, right? That we are now going to go beyond borders. When it actually comes to doing it, I think that mindset itself, because the mindset was geared up towards selling into Sri Lanka. Those and the customer motions there, it's very much relationship based, relationship oriented. You go and strike a relationship with a customer, you get into more of a friendship there, right? And then you start talking about the projects that are coming up and so on. A lot of the meetings are done in Sinhalese, in the native language in Sri Lanka, right? And people were very much used to that, right? And then the company itself, I think, being the largest system integrator, and then reselling is a big part of our business, right? From servers to licenses to so on, and that creates transactions, effectively big ticket, right? Big ticket transactions, and for people who are going after revenue and numbers, I think they need those big ticket items to make their numbers. As soon as you start selling outside, right, you need to start small, right? You start seeing $2,000 transactions, 5,000, 10,000, all, which is insignificant sometimes for a company who has been reselling and so on, right? Suddenly, that mindset shift was a
Mm.
challenge, right? Although that excitement was there, why go through the hassle for this, small ticket item? And then obviously there were challenges in terms of how do you that cultural gap. Having run meetings, having done nurturing in Sri Lanka, very different culture, very social, and you're trying to do something totally remote now. How do you get to that? And then we were not able to invest a lot as well to bring in people who had been there, done that, who had that overseas exposure a lot at the time, right? And with all the challenges that we had, so I think we worked with the teams who had done really great here in this market, but then obviously we lacked that exposure when it came to the ground levels and actually doing, right? So those were some challenges that we had to face.